continue to meet as your people and remind ourselves of the things that are important in life, the plan that you had for our creation, and that continues to unfold in our redemption, which is more than just an individual experience, Lord. It is a collective one, a political one which involves the establishment of a government and a kingdom that will ensure that everyone is safe and can be happy. And it is my prayer that you might continue to fulfill your commitment, Lord, to be with us on this day and help us to understand this plan, to understand how this government unfolds, its principles, how it works. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. Good morning again. Happy New Year. I hope everyone got into the new year safe. Just to confirm again, if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, I will just try and share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
All right, good. So we are going to continue our study, the thoughts on QFMG. So this is part 3. A very quick recap of what we did. We recapped part 1. We spoke about the 3 examples that we looked at concerning the application of symbols, and how prophets took symbols and applied them in different ways, in different histories. And we explored to some extent, not exhaustively, but to some extent, the mechanism of doing that. So we looked at the time of Jacob's trouble, which is Jeremiah 30, the story of Rachel weeping, which is Jeremiah 31, and the story of Acts chapter 2 and Joel, which is based on Joel chapter 2 and 3. Before moving on to Acts 27 and the number 273, we know it's part of our message and rules that numbers tell stories, and the number 273 tells the story of a transfer of power or transfer of leadership, whether it's the story of firstborn to Levites, the story of a new leadership on the boat in Acts 27, or the story of the rise of Rome in 273 BC. And all of that helps us to understand the rise of the Seventh Kingdom at the end of the world in the Sunday law history. So I borrowed the term last time, or a concept from Elder Paminda's studies, which is this idea of panoramic and dispensational views. And hopefully we agreed together that a panoramic view is progressive. It tells a developing story. It spans a very long period. And the symbolism is generic. It has to identify the same thing from start to finish. So we used the example of Elder Emma, and we said if we are looking at a panoramic view of Elder Emma's life, one of the properties of that view is if Emma is the symbol, she has to be the same person all throughout. She can't be different people. She can't be Elder Emma today and then Debbie tomorrow and then Blessing the next day. It has to be the same person. So that concept of genericity, being generic and consistent. Then we said dispensational is specific. It's not generic. It's very specific. It's also time sensitive. So you can look at Elder Emma's life at 55, which is not Elder Emma's life as a teenager. It's different. But you could go back to her teenage years and extract something from there and apply it to her time as an adult, as a 55-year-old. So we looked at that, and then we zeroed into the story of the time of Jacob's trouble. If you remember that graphic there, we discussed that there is a theme that you can pick up, which is the story of Babylon at war with Israel. It begins there when Nebuchadnezzar besieges Israel around 607, 606 BC, somewhere there. And that was the beginning of the 70-year captivity in Babylon, which is the story of the time of Jacob's trouble, the original story. And Ellen White applies it, the symbol of the time of Jacob's trouble, she applies it to the close of probation, or close of probation to second Advent period. And we recognize that that is not a story of captivity. Captivity has nothing to do with that. But it is still a story of Babylon fighting against Israel. We also noted that the outcomes are different. And because the outcome is different, before we get to because the outcome is different, we said it's different because when you actually look in the story, so when you get to this point here, time of the end, as an example. So the information in the middle can help you to understand how the story comes to an end. So the whole story is important. Time of the end, the whole premise of the time of the end is that God's people come out of captivity and they begin to ascend. So God's people are in the ascendancy from the time of the end onwards. So by the time you get to the close of probation, I'll say you know who's winning the war. It's Israel that's winning the war. So therefore, when you take this conflict between Babylon and Israel at the beginning and you apply it to the end, there are certain properties that apply to the beginning that don't apply to the end. One of the most obvious ones being captivity. You cannot take captivity and apply it there because God's people are not subject to Babylon in this case. They are defeating Babylon in that case. So I tried to give a non-prophetic general example or concept of a slider, if you remember the concept of a slider, where you have, this horizontal axis, I'll call it, and you can move this slider to the left or to the right, depending on the point you want to make or what you want to do. It's the same slider, same axis, and it will land at different points. And when it lands at different points, you will see different things or different characteristics, but it's the same slider. So you can take a story, a history, or a symbol. You can take the symbol of Babylon, you can take the symbol of Israel. Within the story of their fight, you can slide it from the beginning all the way to the end. And when it lands there, Babylon is the seventh kingdom, and Israel is the 144,000, right? It's the same war that's going on, but the application of the symbols will be different. Like I said, the outcome will also be different because once the slide is at the end here, Babylon is losing to Israel, whereas at the beginning, Babylon was defeating Israel. And Ignatius asked a question about the seven kingdoms, I think, towards the end of our lesson. And we had a brief discussion about that. And we said these kingdoms, when looked at panoramically, are telling the story of Satan's kingdom. This is all Satan's kingdom, whether it's Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, it's the same entity. It's the same person. So remember the elder Emma analogy, same entity. But depending on where you land the slider, it will look different. So it will look like Babylon, it'll look like Greece, it will look like the papacy, etc. Right? I forget the exact question, but I know we ended up talking about an example of Nebuchadnezzar, which is Babylon at the start, fighting against his government, right? In the person of the three boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And we saw how he was unsuccessful. And therefore, by extension, Satan was not successful in their endeavors. But when you get to the end, which is the seventh kingdom, Satan has perfected the kingdom. And the fight between Trump and the government gives success to Satan. So Satan is able to overcome the obstacles that are put in his way by the government, the US government. So at the beginning, it's the Babylonian government, at the end, it's the US government. Um, it's the same story. It's the king of the north versus the government. But at the beginning, the outcome is failure. At the end, it's success. So are there any comments on what we discussed up to this point? I want to keep it brief if possible, because I want to try and go through these two examples, Matthew 2 and Acts chapter 3, and hopefully finish them today. We'll see how far we go with that, but that's my intention. So any questions, any comments on this at this
I don't know
point?
if you can see hands, Blessing.
I cannot see hands.
Okay,
If I if someone could help with that, I would appreciate.
okay. I have a question.
Okay.
Um, you said that you can take something of, for example, Emma's, in the example of Elder Emma's life, take something of the teen years, for example, and apply it to another period like the adulthood. Um, could you help me with an example of how would that look like in Emma's case or Emma's life? Like, what did you mean there?
So I'll give a very simple example. Maybe it's a silly one. It's the one that comes to mind. When Elder Emma was a teenager, she developed a liking for horses and horse riding. And you take that property or characteristic of her horse riding, whatever her habit, and you can see something related to that as an adult, at 55. Perhaps she continued that habit or she established a horse riding company. So, so that's an example. Does that clarify your question or does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe
So, so the
that
concept, sorry, okay, go ahead.
I understand the example. I have a hard time, or like it's not clear to me why the word application fits there or how it fits there. Like, yeah, if that makes
Okay,
sense.
if you'll allow me, I'll not go into that.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, that's fine.
because yeah, because if it's an issue of a word, then maybe we can discuss it afterwards. But the concept I'm trying to bring out is there's something at the beginning or the middle. There's information in the beginning or the middle that can help to explain something about the end. So, like I said, she has an obsession with horses at 55, and she established this horse racing company or horse riding company. And to get the explanation or where that comes from, you could look back to her teenage years, which was a turning point in her life where she started liking horses. It can help you to explain something about Emma. So forget the word application.
Okay.
It
Yeah,
doesn't
that
really
makes
matter.
okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Anyone else before we proceed? Okay. I'll take that as a no. So we will relook at Matthew 2 again. Um, as I said, the reason why I was kind of repeating and enlarging on these is because of feedback I got where some people were not quite sure or clear on this issue of taking a symbol out of its context and applying it elsewhere. And what I suggested, still suggesting, is that The story has to be the same, which is from beginning to end. So it has to be the story of Satan's kingdom, as an example, the story of Babylon at war with Israel, the story of Emma's life, and so on and so forth. But the context, which I'm saying context is specific or time sensitive, the dispensational view, can be ignored, right? There's things about the context that can be ignored. So context is captivity, ignore that context. But you can take the symbol of Babylon and take the symbol of Israel, you can apply it elsewhere. And you can see them in conflict because that's what the story is about, but the outcome is different. So we're going to do a similar thing with Matthew chapter 2. Um, Maybe we'll just read the verse quickly, or the verses related to that. So Matthew chapter 2, I think, yeah, it's verse 16 to 18. So Matthew 2, verse 16 to 18, Herod had heard of this king of the Jews, and he thought this was an attempt at regime change. He felt he was threatened personally, which wasn't the case in reality. But anyway, he decides he wanted to kill this person, this king of the Jews. And he had tried to do it subtly by getting information through the wise men. That didn't happen. And when he recognized that the wise men were not going to come back and tell him, he decided to launch a campaign against all the young children, I think below, does it say the age? Yeah, below the age of 2, or from 2 and below, that they were to be destroyed, killed. So that's what the story is about. So verse 16 says, Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wrath, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and in all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremy, or Jeremiah, the prophet, saying, In Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted, because they are not. So I've always struggled with this verse and how Matthew applied it for many years. And it's only recently, I think, that I've begun to understand what Matthew was doing here. Whether Matthew had the same level of understanding that we would have today, I guess, is a question we can discuss. But in terms of the correctness of what he did, I think I'm I think I'm beginning to understand it. So Jeremiah 31 is what he was quoting. And the
Yeah.
verse
So I
should,
think,
yes,
can you put the
Susanna?
chapters, please, on the board? Thank you. It's good
Okay,
for us, like, in the future. I've been asked.
sure. So we read Matthew 2, 16 to 18. Now we're going to read Jeremiah 31. And the verse is 15. Yeah, 15 and 16. So verse 15 says, Thus saith the Lord, a voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping. Rachel, weeping for her children, refused to be comforted for her children because they were not. Verse 16, Thus saith the Lord, Refrain thy voice from weeping and thine eye from tears, for thy work shall be rewarded, saith the Lord, and it shall come again from the land of the enemy. So there's many more verses that give you the context. But like I said, if you are to read Jeremiah 25, I think from around 24, 25, all the way to 33, Jeremiah is telling a similar story, which is the story of Babylon rising, king of the north, coming to conquer the glorious land or Judah, and that they were going to go into captivity. Even the time which they'll be in captivity. But he also mentions that there's a promise that they will come out of captivity, which is what Jeremiah 31, verse 16 is about, when it says, don't cry to Rachel, because it says, your children shall come again or return from the land of the enemy, which is talking about the end of the captivity, the end of the 70 years, right? So, how do I draw this? Okay, I'll just do this first. So this is the 70 years again. Jeremiah 30 talks about the time of Jacob's trouble. Jeremiah 31 talks about Rachel weeping for her children. And like we said, this is captivity. That's the story. Let me draw another line here. So this is the 70 years again. That's Rachel weeping. And then, oh, sorry. This is Matthew at the end, around 4 BC. This is, I'll say, 100. It's time of Christ. So here, somewhere here. This is where Matthew places Rachel weeping. So we know this is captivity. We know that already. And what is this history at the end? This period here. This is captivity, which is 607, 537, somewhere there. This history I just marked out. What is this history? From 4 BC to 100. We can participate. It's not a monologue.
We would say the reform line of the line of Christ, or
Sure. So would you call it captivity?
it would be in that sense like the end of the getting out of captivity.
Sure. What's the opposite of getting out of captivity?
Liberty, freedom.
Okay, liberty, freedom. Thanks. Any other words? Anyone else? Someone who's not Andreas? See, there's lots of people. Very few people are speaking today. The opposite of captivity is, this is just English. It's not a complicated, I'm not asking a complicated question, a trick question.
Blessing.
Yes.
Are you looking for freedom?
Yes, I'm looking for a synonym of freedom which more directly relates to captivity.
Li-
Liberation.
Liberation.
Liberty?
Liberty.
Let me say it this way, a biblical term.
Oh,
Um, because the answers you're giving are all correct, but I'm just looking for
Restoration.
not restoration, but you're close.
Restoration.
Um, sorry, who was that? Was
Deli
that Shami? I didn't
deliverance?
hear what you said. Who was that? Could you say that again?
It's Andres again. Deliverance, I said.
Andres. You said, sir?
Deliverance.
Deliverance. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Do we all remember the word deliverance? The raising up of a deliverer, the deliverance of God's people. Do we remember that or no?
I think that's a chapter in the Desire of Ages.
Yes, that's true. It is a chapter in the Desire of Ages. Well, it's a concept in the Desire of Ages. Um, can we all relate to the concept of deliverance? Are we together? This is captivity, 607 to 537. This is deliverance. Do we are we agreed? Yes?
Yeah,
No?
agreed. Just one thing to point out, Blessing,
Yes, Curtis.
is that in those verses in Jeremiah, I don't know if you read it, but let me find the specific verse. It talks about hope about the fact that at the end of this captivity, things are going to be okay.
Yes.
So there's a thread of hope. And Matthew, without saying it, I think is applying the same concept.
Curtis, can I stop you?
Okay.
Because you're kind of going ahead. You've kind of given the answer away, but
Sure.
it's all right.
Okay. Sorry.
No,
It
it's
only
fine.
came to mind because you said deliverance.
No, it's fine. It's not a problem. I just wanted people to exercise their minds in trying to. We'll still do it anyway. We'll still do
Okay.
it.
Okay.
But thank you for the contribution. Sorry about that. Something just happened with the device. Ah, I have to share my screen again. Can you all see the screen again?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, so I was going to ask a question after we agreed that this is captivity and deliverance. So besides Curtis, do we all see that Jeremiah was talking about the weeping happening in the period of captivity, and that where Matthew places it is in a period of deliverance? Can we see that?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. So now a question to the class. Why does Matthew do that? Why does Matthew take something that Jeremiah applies to captivity and applies it to deliverance?
Is it because of his office as a prophet messenger?
Okay. So
Blessing?
I'll say no. I the reason why I won't accept that answer is because as much as it's a true answer, it doesn't help to explain anything because we are not prophets, right? But we still have to understand the scriptures. We have to make application of the scriptures. And I guess we can't wait for a prophet to be raised up. Otherwise we'll wait forever. Um, so as a movement, we need to understand whether what these prophets were doing is actually methodological or arbitrary. So do you understand why I don't like the answer about prophetic license or using the office of prophet?
I'll say yes. I think I get what you're saying.
Okay. So I'm looking for a more detailed, advanced answer for why Matthew did this. Whether Matthew was fully aware or not, I guess is not what we are discussing or arguing. But just conceptually, objectively, why could Matthew do this?
Can we say that he was looking at past history and seeing similar things and then making reference to what was happening? So it's methodology, I guess. If it makes sense, I mean, you can look at past, what has happened in the past, and see that it's similar to what is happening now.
Okay.
So I think
So,
I would say, besides being using prophetic license, anyone can, whatever subject you're studying, you can look in the past, because there is the saying that history repeats. You can look in the past, and if you have studied something in the past or some history, and you look at what's happening now, you can say, oh, but this is similar to this.
okay. Thank you, Rose. I like your answer. So what Matthew did is basically look back at here, the 70-year captivity, and said this is the same as this, right? That the story that Jeremiah is telling in Jeremiah 31. So what Matthew says is Jeremiah 31 is the same as, I'll just say Matthew 2, when Herod did what he did. He's saying this is the same story. And it's only after the prophet Matthew does that you can start looking into it and see in what ways it's the same. So it's similar to what we did here, what Ellen White did. She says, this story of the close of probation at the end is the same as the story of the captivity. It's the war between Babylon and Israel, right? Only that it's coming to its conclusion. Here it was starting, but here it's coming to its conclusion. So Matthew is saying this is the same. This is the start of the story that concludes here. So my question to you now is, what's the story? What is the story that Jeremiah and Matthew are telling that is the same?
Well, I kind of got lost there. Like you said that the story starts. It's the same story that starts where and finishes where.
Where I put start in red
Yeah.
and end in
Okay.
red.
Why is Matthew saying that?
We're not getting
Or
into the why yet. Because we don't know why Matthew is saying that, but he's just telling us it's the same.
Blessing.
Just hold on, Marshall.
Okay.
Andreas,
So yeah.
what Matthew does, he says, Jeremiah said Rachel was weeping for her
Mm-hmm.
children, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Jeremiah is telling a story. And what I'm telling you with what Herod's doing, what's going on here, this is the same thing. So it's the same.
Yeah.
That's all. We've said nothing else.
I guess what confuses me is the start and the end, because are you saying that that Rachel starts weeping back then and she finishes weeping at the time of Matthew, or that it's a repeat?
We're not saying anything about Rachel yet. We're just saying there's a story that's first told here by Jeremiah, and Matthew tells it again. So this
Okay,
is,
so that's what start and end means. That it was told at that point and that it's told again at this point.
yeah, at the moment, that's what it means. We haven't said
Okay.
anything.
Okay.
So my question is, what is the story that Matthew is saying is the same? Because he's obviously making a claim that it is the same. So what's the story that is the same?
Blessing.
Titus, I can barely hear you. You are sounding really muffled.
Oh, let me start.
Are you still speaking, Titus?
No.
Okay. Anyone else?
You said the story of hope before, didn't you? I think.
I didn't say anything.
I'm sure you said hope, that it was a
I
story of
didn't.
hope. Jeremiah.
I didn't.
Even though it was captivity, you mentioned that he was really saying there was hope.
No, I didn't. I did not say that.
Is the question like what's the literal story that they're telling, or like as it more like you're looking for a more abstract concept?
I'm not sure what that means, Andreas. When you say little story and
Okay,
abstract concept, what do you
so let me just try and answer. I would say the story that they're telling is that a mother is crying because something happened to their children.
Okay.
I don't know if
Which,
Blessing,
yes.
can I have a go?
Is that
Yes.
okay, before you have
Titus
a
has
go.
written in the chat. Can you see the chat, Blessing?
Not readily, but I can check now.
Okay, yeah. Do you want to read it? Oh, God.
I think the story is conflict between Babylon or Israel, Rome or Israel. Yes, there is that. That is partially true. It is true. It is true. But that's not quite, I think, the story of Jeremiah 31. I don't think. Okay, Curtis, have a go.
I guess maybe wrong. But Jeremiah is telling the story about, as we've written on the board, Israel going into captivity and that captivity doing something for Israel. And they're going to come out of that captivity. And the terminology used is entering into covenant with God again.
Okay.
So Israel has to go through this process of captivity, essentially. And yeah, they're going to come out of it, we'll say, better for it.
Okay.
And it's going to be painful.
Okay. Thank you, Curtis. Natalie, I agree that it is hope. What I was saying is I did not say that. Curtis said it. That's why I insisted that I didn't, because I didn't give any answer. I was asking for answers. Um, So if we go to Jeremiah 31, because Jeremiah 31 is a very famous chapter to the early Christians, to the disciples, apostles. Who else besides Matthew quoted it? Because I'm trying to have you tell me the answer as opposed to me just giving you the answer. Do we know anyone else who quoted Jeremiah 31? Okay, Titus says, Paul.
Yeah.
What did Paul say about Jeremiah 31? He said Hebrews 8. Okay. Can anyone tell us what Paul said? Because he didn't say Hebrews 8.
Lol. In Hebrews 8, he says something.
He says?
He's talking about
In fact,
the
actually,
new
sorry,
covenant.
don't
Ah, no, no,
answer.
okay.
Please don't answer. Is Debbie with us? Debbie, are you with us? Is Debbie
Yes,
there?
I am. I am.
Yes. Could you tell us what Paul said in
Was he
Hebrews?
saying something about it? Was it something about a new covenant?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
So Paul tells the story of the new covenant in Hebrews 8 and Hebrews 10, new covenant. Why does he tell that story? Okay, I'm going to start picking on people because people are quite reserved today. Simba, are you able to speak?
Yes, I am able to speak. I
One.
don't know. Uh, I don't know.
You don't know why Paul spoke about the new covenant. What do you think? Because we're not talking about Matthew right now, we're talking about Paul. We're going to an easier example of story before we come back to this more complicated one. You don't know why Paul was talking about a new covenant. What do you think? What was your understanding? Because I'm sure you've read that chapter before, you've heard presentations on that chapter before, both outside of this movement and within this movement. So I'm sure you have an idea or an opinion, something that you know.
I think when
Simple.
Paul is talking about new covenant,
Mm-hmm.
my understanding is that he says the law is now no longer on stones, but it's now written in the hearts,
Mm-hmm.
in the heart and the mind, along those lines.
Okay. Thank you. So the new covenant, which is very correct, according to what Simba just told us, is uh, is the story of the law. And the law particularly changing its location. And it's changing its location from where to where?
From stone to the heart.
Yeah. From stone
Mind.
to the heart or the mind. Yes. Do we agree that's a fair enough summary of the new covenant? Yes or no? Okay.
Yes.
So why was this such an important thing to the Christian church? You know, because remember, these are the pioneers of Christianity. Why was this such an important concept for them? Raymond, what do you think? Ray, can you hear me?
Can you repeat your question, Blessing? Sorry, I missed it.
Okay, the question is, why was this concept of the law moving from stone to the heart such an important concept to the early Christian church? Because it was a very big issue. It was a big concept. It was talked about in different ways, but the concept was the same. And I'm saying, why was it such an important concept? I'm guessing Ray is not able to speak.
Sorry, Blessing. I wasn't a second ago, but can you hear me now?
Yeah, can you hear you?
Okay. Was it something to do with as they shifted away from, the tabernacle and the sanctuary and all those like physical, tangible emblems that had made up the Jewish religion, they needed we would say, go from literal to spiritual. Oh, goodness, sorry,
Yes.
a cat just jumped on a chair and turned it upside down.
Okay.
Yeah, is it that in our terms, going from literal to spiritual?
Yes. Thank you. So I'll repackage it slightly, and you tell me if it's good enough for you. That the disciples were identifying a change of dispensation.
Yeah, I'd agree
An
with that.
important one. You agree? Fair summary of what you just explained?
Yep, in much less words.
Okay. I guess I don't have lots of, okay, I do have lots of space. I don't want to write a lot of things. So change of dispensation. So you've got this theme or story or issue of a change of dispensation, and it's very important to the early Christians or the early disciples. And why is it important to the early disciples to continue to hammer home this idea that dispensations are changing? Like Raymond said, the tabernacle and its processes, its ceremonies, um, a lot of those things were not going to operate in the same way anymore. Why was it important for them to emphasize this, talk about it again and again and again? Nyasha or Ignatius, are you able to speak?
Yes, we are listening. We are following.
Yes, so I want to hear
The
your opinion on this question.
So the question is, why was it important? Why was it an important concept that
Yes, this
to the
change of
disciples
dispensation.
that there was a change of dispensation from the ceremonies that they were doing in Leviticus to like in the sanctuary service, the tabernacle. Now they no longer do those things because they believe that now they are in the new dispensation. The dispensation has changed.
Okay, yes, I agree that the dispensation has changed. And I'm saying, why did they have to emphasize it? Why was it such an important thing for them?
It would
Because they taught it a lot.
I think it would then point to the reason why they claim that the dispensation has changed. And the reason being that the birth and death of Jesus Christ is a relevant Christian experience, and it's important to recognize that. Yeah, it's just that's how I see it. That
Okay.
because their message was about Jesus, is it? So
Mm-hmm.
so it was a way of pointing to Jesus to say, this is the person that is whose life has changed the dispensation. I don't know.
Okay.
That's what I think.
So the role of Christ, they are
Yeah.
identifying the role of Christ. That's why you think it's important. Is that a fair summary of what you described, Ignatius?
Yes, it
Okay.
is. Yeah.
All right. Is Nyasha there?
Yes, she is there.
Could you tell us your opinion, Nyasha, on this point?
Yeah, I agree with Ignatius to say that yeah, it was important for them to understand also the change of dispensation, because it was Christ who was supposed to point them to salvation. Yeah, the life of Christ, how he lived. Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, so you're bringing out something else, though. So it was good for you to speak because you're saying this was a salvational concept. Because you said Christ was pointing them to salvation. Yes?
Yeah, because I think when you understand um the nature of the kingdom, or the dispensation, or the present truth, or what can I say? Yeah, when you understand the nature of the kingdom, or the dispensation has changed, it's for your salvation, and you'll be able to understand how you're supposed to act and react in that dispensation.
Okay, thank you. So it's salvational to understand nature of the kingdom, and it impacts behavior, requires change of behavior. Okay, thank you for that. So there's one more thing that I would like us to add to this. Because once you start talking about the role of Christ and how salvational it is to understand that role and the kingdom that Christ is setting up, and that you have to change your behavior. If you keep saying the same thing to your audience, because they were preaching to people, the disciples were, can that teach you something about the people you are preaching to, or they were preaching to?
Sorry, I don't understand that question.
So
What are you asking?
what I'm saying is the disciples, they taught about this new covenant or change of dispensation, and they did so repeatedly. So sermon after sermon, year after year, they're preaching the same thing to people. So I'm saying, can that teach you something about the people that they were preaching to? The fact that they had to repeat this thing again and again.
Okay, clearer. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, it does.
What does it say?
Yeah, stiff-necked.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Could you say it again?
They were slow to learn. Let me rephrase.
Well, you don't like the answer you gave.
Yeah, it was an off-camera one.
Well, I think it was a good answer.
Stiff-necked.
Yes. So that's another important point. I think Kachka says a heart of stone. Yes. So that's another way to put it. So Rose said stiff-necked. And then Kachka said another way to put it is a heart of stone. So I guess that's the point, standout point for me. I'm not saying it's the most important point necessarily, objectively. I'm just saying for me, it's the most significant one because the reason why this concept of a change of dispensation had to be emphasized and taught again and again is because of the Jewish mind. If you understood the Jewish mind, then you would understand the need for emphasizing this thing. Because what was the Jewish mind? What were the Jews expecting? So I want us to define this stiff-neckedness or heart of stone, because it's not just being stubborn, like it's not the issue that a person was rude, they didn't treat their spouse properly, or they beat their children. Those things are bad. Don't get me wrong. But I'm saying that is not what prophecy is identifying or marking as the stiff-neckedness or the heart of stone.
What is it that they were looking for a literal deliverer, like to be like other nations, to have their own king who's going to deliver them, like literally, into battle and everything?
Yes. So the Jewish mind is expecting I'll just say deliverance from the Romans. I'll add through war. Do we agree this was the Jewish mind?
Yes.
In summary. So they expected deliverance from Romans through war. I'll add something else. They also expected permanence of Jerusalem. So what I mean by permanence of Jerusalem, they expected Jerusalem to stand forever. And if Jerusalem stood forever, what also stood forever?
The Jewish system.
The Jewish system. Thank you. So I'll just say ceremonies.
Jason, can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
So God's people go into Egypt and their thinking about God is, if I can say it, morphed into a particular way of thinking, pagan. I'm not sure if you can trace it back before that. But if you were to say Egypt did damage to their way of viewing God. So after that, God sets up a system that resembles a lot of pagan practices, but as a way of like drawing them out of paganism step by step. So it's very visible, it's very angry God theology, like at its core, it's not, but yeah, God is weaning them from that. And then they get to the time period you're discussing, the change of dispensation. So the underlying problem is they've not really dealt with their mindset from Egypt, because everything, the system, it's it, all that.
If you allow me to say, Curtis, in a prophetic
Okay.
way, I really don't like you. Because
Okay.
you keep going ahead of me.
Sorry. Apologies. Okay, if you're
No,
going to
but that's
answer my
fine.
question, then carry on.
Yes, I think we'll get to that part of your question, hopefully.
Okay.
So you've had an
Yeah.
hour already. So I don't know if you want to work till 12.
If that is okay with everyone.
Everyone, yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, all right. So we've discussed a bit on this story of the new covenant. And we said it's this story of the law, which was written in stone, which is the story of deliverance from Egypt. We'll get to that shortly. To it being put in the heart, right? That's the story. We summarized all of that as the story of a change of dispensation, that this was an important concept because it was telling something about God changing how they deal with or interact with their people. And why was it important? We asked, it's because of the role of Christ. It was salvational to understand that role and the nature of the kingdom Christ was setting up. It required a change of behavior on the part of those who would be in that kingdom. And I said all of that becomes significant, I think, because of the Jewish mind. Because the Jews were stone-hearted or stiff-necked. And what I'm saying that means is they had a very literal view of prophecy. So they looked at the Old Testament and they expected things to look like the way they did before. That's why they expected deliverance from the Romans through war, some type of war. And they expected the establishment of Jewish dominance, right? I called it the permanence of Jerusalem. And if Jerusalem stands forever, is permanent and dominates, it means the ceremonies stand forever. And the disciples are trying to tell the people, none of that's going to happen. You're not going to be delivered from Romans through war. Jerusalem is not going to stand forever, the one on earth at least. And therefore, your ceremonies are not going to be relevant, let me say, because they did continue, but they were becoming irrelevant. All of that is part of the story of this new covenant. Are we together so far?
Yes.
I was just wondering how's this connected to Quintus Fabius Maximus Scourgus that you talked about at the beginning of this presentation?
I guess we're not going to get there today. That's my answer, my quickest answer. But what we are doing, basically, Natalie, is building a case for how QFMG can be applied as a legitimate symbol at the Sunday law. That's what we're building towards. Does that make sense? Okay. So, all right. So what we did is we left Matthew for a moment and we went to Paul. And I suggested that it's not just Paul and Matthew, it's all the disciples. All the apostles are teaching the same story, but they'll teach it in different ways. They'll use different symbols and stories. But the reason why I wanted Paul and we went to Paul is because the story of the new covenant is derived from which chapter in the Old Testament? Hello?
Jeremiah 31.
Jeremiah 31. Thank you. So it's derived from Jeremiah 31, which is the same story as the story of Rachel weeping. So that's why we went to Paul and we talked about the new covenant so that we work with the things that we already know, things that are easier to conceptualize. So we know what Jeremiah 31 is about when we talk about the new covenant and why it was important in the history of Christ. It is a bit more difficult, I think, to see in the story of Matthew, because Matthew, in his application of Jeremiah 31, doesn't actually talk about the new covenant. What he talks about is the weeping, right? The weeping of Rachel. So if we go to Jeremiah 31, should be, you can read the whole chapter, but if we go to verse 31, yeah, Jeremiah 31 says, Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I'll make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. And then it continues, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. So I'm going to draw a line now, which illustrates the history of Israel. And how many histories can Israel be divided into generally? Don't know if I asked that properly.
Two.
Okay, maybe I didn't ask it properly. I'll take that. It's not two. I don't know how else to ask the question. So can you try again?
7.
It's not 7.
12.
3.
It's not 12. The histories of Israel.
3.
3.
3. The history of Israel can broadly be divided into 3 histories. And what are those 3 histories?
Out of Egypt, out of Babylon, and out of Rome.
So it's based on their captivity. And Rome. Do we remember this study or this story? So I'll just put deliverance so that it's clear what we're talking about. So this is deliverance from Egypt, deliverance from Babylon, and deliverance from Rome. So these are the 3 major histories of Israel. The other ones are important, but they can broadly be categorized under these 3. Are we all together on that? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And these 2 histories here they make up what we call the Alpha history of ancient Israel, which can be divided into an Alpha and an Omega. And then this is the Omega of ancient Israel. So these 3 histories can also be seen as 2 histories. Are we still together?
Yes, yes, yes. Well, just quiet, but we're together.
All right. So when God talks about the new covenant in Jeremiah 31, where would you place that if you consider these three histories? Would you place it here, here, or here?
The second one.
Second one. You're saying this is new covenant. Why the second one?
Because Jeremiah existed before the captivity of Babylon, and when he was looking at what was coming, he was speaking of the deliverance that would happen after the captivity of Babylon.
Okay, thank you. So did we all understand the answer that Charity gave?
Yes.
That the new covenant that Jeremiah was referring to was after the 70-year captivity in Babylon. So you'd place it here, the second history. That's where you place the new covenant. So if there's a new covenant, what must there be? This is Paul's argument. If you have a new covenant, what must you have?
You must have an
Old covenant.
Old covenant. And do we agree the old covenant is here with Egypt? Yes? No?
Yes.
Because Jeremiah says it's not like the one that I established with them, when I took them out of Egypt. Well, what's the symbol of this old covenant? Mountain.
The two tables.
Mountain.
Oh.
Sinai.
Sinai. So this is Sinai. That's the old covenant. You could say two tables, but I was looking for Sinai. And this is the new covenant. What is the promise of the new covenant? What does it say about the new covenant in Jeremiah? Is my question clear? Can people still hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it about writing his hearts, but writing the law in their hearts or something?
Yeah, so the law is going to move from the tables of stone to the heart. But what does that mean? So these are your two tables, bad-looking tables. And it's going to move into the heart. What did that mean?
Everyone individually will know God for themselves now and have a.
And it's fulfilled in Christ. New covenant is fulfilled in Christ.
Is that what it meant?
No.
That everyone was going to individually
Oh,
understand.
I'm just reading Jeremiah.
Do you mean from a stone heart, from a stone heart to a flesh heart or something?
No. So
No, okay.
I think Elder Emma quoted a point that's spoken of in Jeremiah in the New Covenant. It says,
They'll know the Lord.
yes, that they will all know me. And it's going to be different from Sinai. How did things work at Sinai? Let's do it that way. I guess we'd have to be quick because the time is
Moses
almost.
was the only one who went up.
Moses was intercessor.
So you have Moses as the intercessor. Moses. Okay, let me try and make this graphic. So you've got God. Sorry, let me draw that again. So how it worked is you had God, then you had Moses, and then you had Israel, or the people. Moses was a mediator or an intercessor. That's how that covenant worked. Yes? Are we together?
Yeah.
And how is the new covenant going to work? You've got God, and then
with people, the Israelites.
yes. So you've got God. I'll put Moses there. And then Israel. But what I'm going to do is cross Moses out. This was going to be a covenant where God is directly communicating with Israel. So the difference between the old covenant and the new covenant is the removal of the intercessor, Moses. Are we together? Are we together? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So what was the role of an intercessor? Does anyone know? If you don't know, you can just say and I'll say it quickly. Does anyone actually know the role of an intercessor in covenants? Because all this was covenant language. These were things that were familiar in the ancient Near East. The role that Moses played was not a unique one. This was something that was done a lot in the past. So does anyone know what that role was? It's
Being
similar.
It's someone
being a
that
witness.
High priest.
Okay, sorry, say one person at a time. Um, okay, Richard said high priest, thank you. The charity?
I said a witness.
Witness, okay.
Uh,
Thank you. Yes?
Blessing. I think
uh
Sorry,
trying to
Rose. I think Andreas had said something. So.
okay.
Mhm.
yeah, I was gonna say it's someone that make sure that the agreement that the two parties have are fulfilled and that everyone's keeping their side of the conditions.
Okay, thank you. Rose, last one.
Uh, I wanted to add on to what Andrea said, just one more point to say that it's making sure that you reconcile both sides.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you. Yes, so that is correct. Um, yes, there's many other answers in the chat that are also correct. So I'll just work with these few, particularly the one of making sure that both sides meet the terms of their end of the agreement or the covenant. That was Moses' job, to make sure that God keeps what the law says and that Israel keeps what the law says. So my next question is, when Moses died, did that role come to an end? Did that mean they were now under the new covenant?
No,
He died and then he went to heaven, of course.
no.
So what happened?
So there were other leaders that were raised up, you know, and prophets, and I think the cycle kept going on, that there would always be someone who is there. For example, with the Samuel, for example, Joshua. There would always be someone who steps in to be
So
to
so
be
who's the someone?
yeah, to do that role.
So who's the someone?
Joshua, when Moses died, Joshua immediately stepped in.
Yes. I'm saying what's the office? What's the
Intercessor.
okay, yes,
Judges.
the intercessors, but who were the intercessors in Israel? That's my question.
Or
Who performed the
the
role of
judges.
Moses, making sure that Israel followed the law?
The judges.
A priest.
That Israel and God followed the law.
Prophets.
Because what you say is correct. The judges made sure that the law is enforced, but they didn't really make sure that God also kept the law. There was a group of people that made sure that God kept the law and Israel also kept the law. And who are those?
High priest.
The high priest? It was not the high priest.
I think someone said
The,
prophets.
the high priest didn't, I'll say challenge God, say, you said this in your law, keep it. The high priest didn't do that. I don't think that was part of the high priest's job function.
Was Abraham?
Levites.
Abraham
A
was before
prophet.
Moses.
I think a prophet's blessing.
Prophets.
Yeah, they suit the role.
So prophets would constantly go to Israel and tell them what? What would prophets tell Israel?
You're breaking the law here and there and there.
Yes, you're not meeting your end of the agreement. What would they also say?
It's tough.
God, it's
Not to Israel.
unfair. God,
What
you're
do they
being
say?
God, you're being unfair.
Yes, they'll say either God, you're being unfair, or you are not fulfilling your end of the agreement. Whether you read Habakkuk or you look at Elijah or you look at Jeremiah. So Elijah, for example, would say, God, you said if Israel's not keeping the law, what are you going to do? In Leviticus,
There's a bit of
if
Gonna
Israel
wink at them.
disobedient,
In Jeremiah, he winks at their sins,
no,
is
no,
it?
no. Elijah. Elijah goes to God and he's challenging God and he says, you said, of course, the story doesn't say that way. You said that if Israel is disobedient, you're going to do something. And what was that something?
Make
Elijah.
them suffer.
Yes, but I want the
Captivity.
specifics.
Captivity.
They were
No,
deceived under false prophets,
it wasn't captivity. Elijah.
prophesying smooth things.
No. What did Elijah tell God to do? Have we forgotten the story of Elijah?
Elijah told God to stop the rain.
Yes, he told God to stop the rain because that's what God had said in Leviticus. If you don't uh, keep this law, I'll make your earth iron and your heaven as brass, something like that. You're going to have famine.
Yeah.
And that's what Elijah did. So when Elijah went to Ahab and said, there's not going to be rain except at my word, what was Elijah simply doing?
You was okay. So Elijah was simply saying, um, what God said. That's Elijah's word. So we're simply saying, if you don't keep your end of the bargain, God is not also keeping. Is going to do this. Like
Yes,
It was a reminder.
he was fulfilling the role of the intercessor. It was like a reminder,
yeah,
as Andrea says, that God is going to keep their end of the agreement. I have to make sure you keep your end of the agreement, and God keeps the end of their agreement. Are we together?
yeah.
So you can go to different examples of prophets. They do the same thing in different ways. But I'm suggesting that's the role of prophets. Yes? So when the new covenant comes along and it says that God is going to enter into covenant with Israel directly, and it's not going to be like how it was at Sinai, what's that saying?
I think it's saying you can hold God, you can ask God to keep their side of the covenant and directly, and God can ask you to keep your side of the covenant directly. Like you
Yes.
can have
So what is Israel becoming? Israel as a nation.
Israel as a nation. I don't know now.
An intercessor.
So intercessor, but they don't yes, an intercessor. But that's not the answer I was looking for. I was looking for another one.
They are like a prophet in
They're
that
becoming a
Prophets.
prophet.
they're becoming a prophet in that they are holding both sides accountable, humanity and God.
Israel is becoming the prophet. So the role that was being fulfilled by these different individuals was now going to be fulfilled by whom?
By the nation Israel.
By the entire nation.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
That's the story of the new covenant. But I hope you can see there's a problem, though. There's a problem with what I've just told you. Does anyone see what the problem is?
That there needs to be two parties in that second covenant as well.
Yes, there needs to be two parties. That's one problem.
An
Another
intercessor.
one?
An intercessor.
There's no intercessor.
No, intercessor is not the problem, because that's actually the solution. God says, I'm getting rid of that. The new covenant is not going to be like the old covenant, because you didn't keep it anyway.
Haven't we made Christ the intercessor?
No, that's a different story.
Okay.
So the problem I'm seeing, Blessing, is if you look at the old covenant, right? There are three entities: God, an intercessor, Israel. And if you look at the new covenant, then there is God, but Israel is now the intercessor or the prophet. An intercessor for who? There should be something else below there where Israel becomes a prophet too. I don't know.
Yes, so I agree that is problem number one. We've identified that one. I'll tell you what the problem is.
Can I say something? I think
Okay.
the problem is there seems to be a continuation of the covenant, because if this is going to be new and the new is dealing away with the intercessor or prophet, why is it now with the new you have Israel being a prophet again? Because it's now like a perpetuation of that old covenant, because it's like there's no difference. Only that there was one intercessor, but now
Yeah,
the
many.
whole nation, it's a group, it's collective.
Okay.
Is that
That's another way of saying problem number one.
okay.
So anyway, this will be my last point for today, and we'll pick it up from here next time. The problem is, if you look at the deliverance, which is after the 70-year captivity, right? Who was leading the captivity? And the sorry, not the captivity. The reform, the work of
Deliverance.
restoration.
Is it the Medes of the Persians?
After the exile, tell me the people who are doing this work.
Nehemiah.
You were Nehemiah,
Ezra.
Ezra. Uh-huh. There's other prominent figures. The particular ones I'm looking for.
Malachi.
Okay.
Yes, you've got Malachi. Thank you. That's one. And then?
Is it exclusive to Israel?
Yes, this is Israel. Because it's the work happening in Israel.
Okay.
I'll tell you the ones that I have in mind. Haggai.
Habakkuk.
No, Habakkuk is before the captivity. Zechariah. You could have an argument about these two, so I won't talk about them much. But I think there's consensus about these three. What were these three?
Prophets.
They were prophets. And what were they doing? What were they telling Israel to do?
To submit to the future captives.
No.
They were telling Israel to come out of Babylon and rebuild Jerusalem.
And?
Yeah, that's the one.
And establish the kingdom again.
Telling them to keep the law.
Yeah, to keep the law.
Which law?
The Moses law.
The law of Moses. So do you see the problem? God says in the new covenant, I'm getting rid of this entity that tells you to keep this law. Yes, that's how I'm defining it. Then make sure you keep this agreement. So the problem is, firstly, you've got prophets, and you have a continuation of this agreement, the law of Moses. I'm suggesting that's what the problem is. So, was this history really the new covenant? The story of Babylonian deliverance?
No.
It failed to be implemented.
Okay. So what I will say is it wasn't a failure. Andrea said failure. I'll say a different word. It was the beginning. This was the start of the new covenant. Because there are properties of the new covenant that were fulfilled in this history. And what was going to happen? Because once it starts, what must you have?
End.
We must have an end. So the new covenant, the story of the new covenant begins at the end of the 70-year captivity, the story of the Babylonian deliverance. And it comes to its completion, or complete fulfillment, at the end. And this is what Matthew's identifying. But because of time, we'll leave it there. Let's pray. To God, we thank you for the opportunity you had to discuss more together about methodology, about prophetic history, and how you have been leading your people. I pray that you might continue to help us to understand these different concepts and how they can help us to understand the end of the world, how we are to apply symbols to make sense of the events that are happening externally and the work that we are to do internally. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.